Hello, thank you for joining me. I am super excited for this video because I have a new to me tarot deck, Tarot of the Holy Spectrum, and I'm going to be doing a walkthrough. So this is technically not an unboxing because I already looked through the cards once or twice when I first got the deck a few days ago. And I liked it so much that I wanted to get on camera and record some of my initial impressions on the cards. It's a really cool deck, so I hope you will enjoy looking at the imagery with me and hearing some of my thoughts on the imagery. I will in a moment be turning the camera around so you will have a great view of the cards. Don't worry about that. I do want to apologize that the audio is not going to be great. I have this camera which has very good visual, but I need to get a microphone for it. So I'm sorry the audio isn't going to be amazing, but you'll be able to see the cards really well, which I guess is the most important thing. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the deck for those of you who are not familiar with the deck. This is an indie deck, and it is created by the artist Chase Voorhees. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I think it came out, I'm not sure when the first edition came out, but I feel like it was pretty recently. I'm filming this at the beginning of 2021, and I think it came out sometime in 2020. I might be a little bit off on that, but it was fairly new. And I remember seeing some of the images from this deck on Instagram and thinking it looked pretty cool, but by the time I went to think about getting it, the first edition was already gone, already sold out. So I think it was fairly quickly that he released what I have here, which is the second edition. And I was looking on his Instagram account for the deck, and I understand there are a handful of cards that have changed. So between the first edition and the second edition, a few cards are different in what I will be sharing with you here. It's fairly Rider-Waite-Smith based. There's some cards that are actually very similar to the Rider-Waite-Smith depictions, but there's some that give a completely new spin on things. What this reminds me the most of out of my collection is the Hayworth Tarot. I made also like a walkthrough video of the Hayworth Tarot last year, so I'll link to that in the description of this video. Both of these decks have what I would kind of describe as a surreal vibe to the art, which I actually really like. So I mentioned already that this deck was created by Chase Voorhees. He is the spouse of Lindsay Mack, who has a podcast called Tarot for the Wild Soul, which is pretty popular. And I became acquainted with Lindsay about a year ago, right when my deck, the Spacious Tarot, came out. She came across the Spacious Tarot on Instagram, I think, and she sent Annie and I this very kind, sweet email saying that she really resonated with the imagery and she had this great connection to our deck. So she has our deck, the Spacious Tarot, and so I was able to get to know her a little bit through emails and found out some cool kind of synchronicities that her and I have some similar ways that we look at the cards. So I've only heard a few episodes of her podcast. I do want to listen to more. In particular, I just saw when I was getting ready to film this video, when I was looking at the Instagram page for this deck, Tarot of the Holy Spectrum, that she has a podcast episode interviewing her husband who did the art for this deck. So eventually I'll listen to that, and I think that would be another great way to get to know more about his process for creating this. And then I think the last thing I wanted to mention preliminarily before we start actually looking at the cards is that the deck does not come with a guidebook. So this, as someone who has also created their own deck, it's very interesting to me, this decision. I would be curious to know, I'm not going to try and assume I know why Chase made that decision, but it was for me creating the Spacious Tarot, it was actually kind of hard creating the guidebook because I really wanted people to be able to form their own understanding of the cards. I wanted to make it very clear that what I wrote in the guidebook were some beginning points for exploration, but I didn't want to go in and say like, this image means this and it's meant to be interpreted this way. It's kind of funny because the way that a lot of people find me is I wrote a series of blog posts about the Wild Unknown Tarot. And so it's just kind of this, I've been on all sides of this situation, because when I got the Wild Unknown, I didn't have a guidebook for the deck. And that was actually really great for me because it gave me the opportunity to go into those cards and write those blog posts that were really just based on kind of my interpretations of the imagery. So it is nice to be able to do that with a deck. Sometimes having a guidebook is nice because sometimes we want at least something, kind of a starting point for going into the cards. But either way, my point is this deck does not come with a guidebook. So for me, that's actually, with where I am right now in my tarot practice, kind of cool, because it gives me the opportunity to think about what do these images speak of, what do they bring up for me, and I'll be sharing some of that, of course, in this video. So without further ado, I'm going to flip the camera around and let's take a look at the deck. All right, we are going to hope for the best in terms of lighting. The clouds are starting to come out, but here is the box that the deck comes in. Quite simple, nice matte black, and we just have, hopefully the camera's picking this up, a bit of this holographic foil here on the infinity sign. And it has this magnetic opening, bam, and we have more holographic inside. Says Tarot of the Holy Spectrum, created by Chase Voorhees, 2nd edition, first printing. Getting the cards out of the box, you can see the backs are just plain black, and you might even be able to see on the camera there already are fingerprints coming up on my cards. This is a really nice matte finish on these cards. I love it. It feels amazing. But I do find with this, my printer calls this skin texture matte, which is a slightly creepy name, but this skin texture matte that a lot of decks have, it feels awesome and I love it, but the flip side is you get fingerprints on your cards sometimes. The edges are a very cool matte black too. Okay, I promise we are going to get into the actual cards. In fact, here's the Fool, setting the tone for the deck. So again, the title of the deck is Tarot of the Holy Spectrum, and the use of color is a big part of the theme behind this deck. So I still really need to sit with it and think about how that speaks to me. But you'll notice as we start going through them, I believe it's the major arcana are quite black and white focused with just a tiny bit of strategic color. And then once we get into the suits, there's sort of a color spectrum that unfolds throughout the suit. Overall, to me, there's this very, I don't know how to describe it, but the word Neptunian keeps coming to me. Plutonian maybe, I don't know. I'm not an astrology expert, but Aquarian, I don't know what it is, but there's something about the starkness, and there's a lot of like this star theme going throughout the cards. It kind of feels, it has this like distant feeling, but it also feels very personal at the same time. I'm not sure how to put it into words, but I really like it. So yeah, here's our Fool card. We have some traditional things we're used to seeing with the Fool. The imagery of the cliff. I love the lemniscate with the full rainbow colors here. I love, love, love this Magician. This is what I was referring to. You're probably already starting to see a bit of the surreal vibe to this card. So we have the red color here with the Magician, which makes sense to me. It's this very primal, powerful color, very fitting for the Magician. Still a lot of the symbols we're used to seeing in traditional depictions. We have the lemniscate, we have the 4 tools down here, and I'm not sure exactly what the intention is, but I really like that there's these, to me it's almost like this kind of energetic thread coming through the lemniscate up here and being channeled into the tools, which goes with that theme of the Magician, the as below, as above, so below. The High Priestess, if you can make this card out here, this imagery is pretty similar to the Waite Smith depiction. There's the moon crown headpiece with the full moon in the center, and what you can probably see the most is that she's holding a pomegranate, and there are also the pomegranates in the Waite Smith version. I love the Empress, this floral background that's kind of going throughout the whole back of the card and then merging into the outfit that the Empress themselves is wearing. Love it. The Empress and the Emperor both have this kind of pastel purpley color going through them. I watched a video from my friend Shona. She also has this deck. She's the one who enabled me to get this deck because I saw her post on Instagram when it was available again. And she pointed out that the Emperor looks kind of gender neutral, which is really cool. I have very much gravitated away from decks that use people over the past few years, and that's one of the reasons why the depictions of gender can sometimes just be messy, but it's cool when people mix things up, and I do think the Emperor here looks like, you know, they could be any number of gender identities, and I also really like that the Emperor is, to me, sort of what I'm seeing is almost like a mountain down here, some type of very stable rock structure, and the Emperor themselves is kind of like ascending up out of that structure. My initial impression of the Hierophant, again, you know, with there not being a guidebook, I'm not sure if I'm getting what was intended here, but it's almost like I see this individual here, and these seem to me like maybe spirit guides, some type of personal connection that they have to deity. And I like that this is going for that idea of, you know, you sort of having the sovereignty to have your own connection to divinity, to spirit. It's not like the Rider-Waite-Smith where it's more sort of based on the imagery of a figurehead, you know, a pope or something like that. It's really you can have that connection yourself. I really like this Lovers card because it ties into, to me, what I see in this imagery is almost like this person is connecting with their own reflection. So there's this whole aspect of, you know, of course the Lovers is sometimes about our connections to other people, our love of, you know, our relationships with other people, sure. But there's also this whole aspect to the Lovers about your connection with yourself. So it's cool playing into that with the imagery on this card. Now we are to one, the Chariot. This one I'm not so sure how I feel about it. I don't have really any initial impressions. So we have a car with no wheels, which that aspect is interesting. I'm sure there's something there. And then maybe you can make out there's sort of this person perhaps that in the driver's seat, so to speak, and then we have some type of kind of shadowy entity over here. So I'm not sure. This is one I'll have to think about. It's not that I dislike it off the bat, it's just I'm not quite sure how I would tie it into how I think about the Chariot. We have Strength, another one that draws upon some of the symbols that we see in a lot of depictions of the Strength card with the lion and the lemniscate and the person here. This is another figure that could be of any number of gender identities, which is again a cool thing with this deck. I also like, this is another thing like with the Hayworth Tarot as well. These are the only two decks I've really connected with recently that have people, and they both show people in more of an like an abstract or a surreal type of way. So maybe that's partly what I need to like connect with a deck with human imagery. I can't have things that are too realistic. I don't know, for me it's just like that gets in the way. So it makes it easier for me to connect into the essence of this card when that isn't there as kind of a sidetrack, I guess. I love the Hermit. Love, love, love. It's another one where this is imagery we're used to seeing with the Hermit, but it somehow still feels fresh at the same time. That blue color with the lantern is fantastic. I love the mountain. It has this, as I'm looking at this more, I don't have the Star Child or the Moon Child tarot, but something about, and I know the art is very different. I'm not saying art-wise it reminds me of that, but there's something about it that gives some of those vibes to me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. The Wheel of Fortune is another one I don't have an immediate impression of. It's another one I'll need to think about, kind of like the Chariot. It's another one where I don't dislike it, but I didn't immediately feel like, oh yeah, another sort of twist, a lot of Rider-Waite-Smith elements with the Justice card, but of course it still feels new. So here we have the Tethered one. Of course this would traditionally be the Hanged one, or well, in my deck it's the Hanged one. In a lot of decks it's the Hanged Man. And I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I need to sit with this one a little bit, but I do think it's interesting. What I thought of when I saw this image for the first time is the idea of astral projection, and this concept that you can experience different perspectives and different visions even when you are, in theory, physically in the same place. So I'm not sure if that's what it's going for, but that's kind of the aspect of this card that it brought up for me. I like the Death card. Something about the way that the skeleton is curled up, it almost reminds me of a fetal position. So it ties into, something we talk about a lot with the Death card, is that their death is essentially a process also of rebirth. So, this is a vision of death, but maybe there's also like the imagery kind of evokes a womb as well, something also beginning to grow and beginning to take shape, which is cool. I did see on the Instagram account for this deck that Temperance is one of the cards that had been changed from the first edition to this edition. I honestly can't remember. I did look at it, but I can't remember what it looked like in the first edition. And this is another one, yeah, I need to think about it. My initial impressions with this one is, I don't know what, I'm not sure this is where he's going with it, but it made me think about like the healing power of touch. And there's also something about, this is a kind of common motif throughout the deck, but this hand feels more of like a cosmic, energetic entity, whereas this feels more like an earthly entity. So there's something about forging those connections with entities that transcend this physical plane. That seems to be kind of a running theme. Here's the Devil, and we're really confronted, in actual words, with the limiting beliefs and sort of the inner critic, inner demon aspect of this card, which is a big part of how I think about the Devil. But I have some hesitation with this card because, especially with the words being there, it really takes you directly into that particular way of interpreting this card. And there's a lot of ways that I think about the Devil that don't necessarily tie into the words that we're seeing here. So I can work with this. I like it. I do think it's cool. But it definitely takes, to me at least, it takes you in a really specific way of viewing the card. I love the Tower. I love it. Another one. We can see the Rider-Waite inspiration, of course, but my favorite thing in this card, well, two things. One is the sort of, it's almost like this tower is kind of coming out of this mountain, right? Which reminds me of the Emperor, so I'm not sure if that was intentional, but I feel like this kind of thematic tie-in between the Emperor being about things being built up, and then the tower, of course, things sometimes need to be torn down for whatever reason, and the figure sort of coming out of the tower here has this glow around them, and it reminds me of so long ago. And I'm not saying, like, I'm sure other people have said this too, but when I first started my business, I made this little video about the tower, and how the tower is about both breakdowns and breakthroughs. So this kind of glow around this person gives me that idea, like it takes you in either direction. You could really read this tower as this person is having a breakthrough. The star is another one that I love, even just from an art perspective, not even taking into account the interpretation. I just love this card. There's sort of this weariness that I see in this person, and I think that's really actually kind of beautiful for the star, because at least for me, the star is a card that I turn to when I'm feeling kind of weary and when I need replenishment, when I need reconnection. I love the moon itself on the moon card. It's very cool. And the mountains. I love any card in this deck where we can see mountains. I love the mountains. This is another one where I really need to think about like what the imagery actually means to me, because it's almost like we're seeing these like three paths. So there's this person here on the boat, and there's the buck, and then the wolf, and then that to me, I think it looks like a horse. So I kind of need to sit and think about what did those represent. Like in the moon, in the Waite Smith version, there is the wolf and the dog, and those are traditionally thought of as representing more of a sort of primal, wild, untamed aspect of our nature, with the wolf, and then the dog representing more of our sort of, I guess, domesticated self, so to speak. So yeah, I'll have to think about like maybe these tie into that imagery somehow. The sun, it's a cool illustration, but I'm not, yeah, this one is another one. I really need to think about how I would interpret this. The first thing I noticed about this is it's almost, I'm not sure, but it's like there's this creature on the moon, and then there's this creature on the sun, and they look like the same creature. So I'm not sure. And the person sort of on the back of the sun, like they kind of like the one on the star. To me, they look sort of like tired and exhausted. So I like the imagery, but I'll have to think about how would I interpret that. Judgment has been retitled to Awakening, which I've seen in a number of decks, and I think I do like this title. I think I'm okay with this because it really does make sense for me with how I think of the Judgment card, and I know a lot of people get hung up on that title, Judgment, and it just evokes like Christianity and dogma, and sometimes people just don't like it. And then the imagery itself is almost like all of these people are kind of, I guess, sleeping, you could say. They have their blindfolds on, and then we have this central figure awakening, taking off the blindfold. So I can work with that. The world is another one that was changed from the first edition, and as you can see, what he's done here is essentially created an echo of the Fool with the world. So at first I was like, what? I don't get it. I don't think I like that. But the more I've thought about it, I think I can probably work with it, especially when you think of the world from that theme of sort of completion, which is one of the themes of the world. Okay, I'm going to start going a little more quickly, both because I'm rambling a lot and because my camera is going to die at some point. So, okay, so here is the Ace of Swords. Look at the colors in this. Oh my goodness, I love the colors in this. Another one, got some Rider-Waite Smith imagery, definitely can work with that. Two of Swords, oh, love the colors in that one as well. Another very Rider-Waite Smith based imagery, and definitely can work with that. Another person who seems, gender expansive. Three of Swords, wow, this one does have kind of like a comic book feel with the art. Well, I guess a lot of the art has that feel to some degree, but yeah, we have another one where the imagery is somewhat what we're used to seeing with the I don't know if you can see it, but my camera's not going to focus. Anyways, so that's that one. Four of Swords, this one is one that super reminds me, not specifically of the Four of Swords in the Hayworth Tarot, but just the vibe of the Hayworth Tarot. I love it. It's kind of creepy, isn't it? But it's great. Five of Swords, I've come to realize the fives in this deck because the devil's 15, but I'm not sure about the fives. Interestingly enough, fives are often about challenges, and the fives in this deck seem like they're going to challenge me. It's another one where I feel like the imagery is taking you into a really specific direction, which is part of how I think about this card, but not how I always go with this card. I love the Six of Swords. Love those colors. Imagery's familiar. The Seven of Swords has kind of a minimalistic feel, but it still works really well. We can see the influence from the Rider-Waite Smith deck. It's great. Same thing with the Eight of Swords. Oh my gosh, I love the colors on all of these swords cards. Nine of Swords also very Rider-Waite Smith based. And then the Ten of Swords, I'm not sure exactly what's happening in this image, but definitely ties into some of what we're used to seeing with that card. And then we've got our court cards. So Page of Swords, Knight of Swords, the blue tone here, Queen. I love the Queen. That's another one that reminds me a bit of my beloved Hayworth Tarot. And King of Swords. He's got like boom boxes around him, and he's holding, what is it, a book or a paper? It says truth. Into our cups, Sue. That's a really cool Ace of Cups. Very like surrealistic vibe to that one. Another one of my favorites, the Two of Cups. Love it. Three of Cups, another good example of there's people, but they feel really welcoming. They feel like friends, even though they have this sort of abstract vibe to them. It's great. I love that Three of Cups. Totally can work with that. Four of Cups, refusing, apathy. I don't know. There's Four Cups. Five of Cups. That's a cool Five of Cups. Yeah, another one where we can see some of the traditional imagery, but it feels like a different take as well. I'm not so much a fan on the Six of Cups. It really goes into to me, that's like someone holding a photograph of like kind of the inner child, nostalgia type aspect of this, which again is one aspect of how I see the Six of Cups, but yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about that one some more. The Seven of Cups is very cool. All of these cups kind of coming out of the mind. It really gets that bewildering vibe. Bewildering is definitely a word I think about a lot with the Seven of Cups. The Eight of Cups. At first, when I saw the Nine of Cups, I wasn't sure what to make of it, and then I realized it's a well, and I thought about a wishing well. So I'm not sure if that was the intention, but sometimes the Nine of Cups is referred to as the wish card. I like this imagery on the Ten of Cups, but it's very different. It's very dark colors for the Ten of Cups, but I still think it works really well. It's kind of a cool twist on this card. And these Cups court cards are so red. I'm not sure what to think about that. It's not a color I really think about with these cards, but here we are. So I do like the Page of Cups, and the Knight of Cups seems, pretty Rider-Waite-Smith based. The Queen of Cups, very cool, very different for the Queen of Cups. This is a card I relate to a lot personally, so I'm going to be sitting with this one because that's a cool depiction of the Queen of Cups. And the King of Cups, they're with their, I was going to say disciple, but that's probably not the right word. They're with a companion, maybe a student. Into our wands, so the color kind of continues here with the spectrum. The reds continue into the wands. That's a great Ace of Wands. Definitely can work with that Two of Wands. Love this one. Feels very familiar from the Rider-Waite-Smith, but again, still fresh. Four of Wands also just reminds me of my Hayworth Tarot. I love seeing the back of this person. It has kind of a ghostly feeling to it, but I really like it. Not sure what to make. What is going on? Yeah, it's the fives. Guys, it's the fives. I'm not sure. I've got to think about all the fives in this deck. Six of Wands kind of feels like you're on the path to this. I don't know. You're on the path to something. Another one that's familiar yet also different. Pretty standard with our Eight of Wands. That's an interesting take on the Nine of Wands. It almost to me looks like this person is resting, which is the opposite of a lot of imagery with the Nine of Wands. Very interesting. I love the colors on the Ten of Wands. And our court cards. I love when the Queen of Wands has a cat. As a cat lady, I always approve. She has a cat in the Rider-Waite-Smith. She's got a cat here. And going on to our pentacles, love this idea of the little plant growing up, seed imagery. Two of Pentacles looks so much like my life. Literally behind me right now are notebooks strewn out on the floor. There's Super Nintendo controllers over here. I love video games, so I resonate with this one. Three of Pentacles, combining your skills with other people's skills. I love that Four of Pentacles. It kind of reminds me of the imagery on the Four of Swords. Here we are with the Five again, and yeah, for sure it's the fives in this deck I just have to think about. I'm just not sure what to make of this one. Six of Pentacles, we have the two central figures holding the pentacles and offering them to our off-stage figures. I love, 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 love that Seven of Pentacles. Eight of Pentacles feels more modern, but still has that traditional vibe. Nine of Pentacles, another one I saw had changed from the first edition I saw on Instagram, and I actually liked this one better. I really like this for the Nine of Pentacles. And the Ten of Pentacles has this feast imagery. It actually reminds me a lot of another deck I got not that long ago. The Way Home Tarot has kind of a similar feel to the Ten of Pentacles. And our last group of court cards. I like that the Knight of Pentacles is on a buck. It's not a horse. Okay, there we have it. The Tarot of the Holy Spectrum. Such a cool deck. I will put a link in the description of the video. Oh my goodness, let's not look at my fingerprints. Because I'm probably going to write a blog post to accompany this video with a few more thoughts about some of my favorite cards, some of the cards that I want to do some more contemplation around. But overall, it's a very cool deck. I could certainly see this being one that I work with a lot. So thank you for being here and joining me for the video. If you have any questions about the deck, you're welcome to let me know. Of course, I'll also link to the website where you can purchase the deck and to the Instagram page and all of that good stuff. So take care, guys. Bye-bye.